On Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. I think we're up to the two dots about 12 lines up from the bottom, but if not, we'll do a little chazar. It said in the Mishnah, Ein neheges ela b'ru'uyin laheid. The Mishnah said that the din of you can only have a shvua sa'edus on someone who's roy laheid. In fact, we already said someone who's a gazlan, for some reason can't be an aid, or karav, all those things are excluded. So what does it mean, ru'i lahaydid? Amar papa lafukim melech. It says it's coming to exclude a king. A king is not allowed to be an aid. He says it's coming to exclude a gambler. Mandam misachik b'kovya kol shekain melech. According to the mandam, it says it's talking about a gambler, certainly a king. If a gambler is excluded from saying Edis, certainly a king is excluded from saying Edis. He's midaraisa excluded. The Mesachik B'Kuvya, the gambler, it's only a derabanan that he's not allowed to say Edis. So since midaraisa is a kosher aid, and he denied knowing the Edis, he's going to be treated as a shvua Edis, and he's going to be chayiv to bring the carbon oil of the earth. So we had the machlokes Reb Meir and the Chachamim in the Mishnah, right? That it said in the Mishnah, we said the person is chayiv for a shvus edus b'fnei bezin, shloi b'fnei bezin b'fnei atzmai. Reb Meir said that whether he's in bezin or not in bezin, if he says b'pi atzmai, which we said b'pi atzmai means that he himself stated, I'm making a shvua that I don't know the edus, or if the other person said, say a shvua, and he said amen, which is treated as if he said himself, that's going to be whether he's in Bezdin or not. But mipia cherim, if the Taiveya said to him, Amashbiya you, that you have to make a shvua, I'm putting on you a shvua that you have to swear that you don't know edus, ein chayavna sheyachapru b'hem bebezdin. The Mishnah says that according to Reb Meir, that you're only chayiv in Bezdin, but outside of Bezdin, it's not going to be have a din of shvua edus. And we're going to see what the limit is, where Reb Meir gets it from, why it's the dafka in Bezdin and not out of Bezdin. The shorter answer is that the din of shvua edus is said in the pasuk. It says, "Ve'im la yagid v'nasa avayne." The person, if he won't say the edus, then he's going to have to bear the consequences of his edus that he didn't say. When a person has a shua imposed on him to say edus, if he won't say it, and that's going only in Bezdin. And this pasuk is talking about someone who has an aid, a shua imposed on him. That means that he hears the Taiveya telling him, make a shvua that you don't know it. So the pasuk is talking about v'shama kol Allah, where it's a shvua mipi acherim, and it says in Layagid is talking about in Bezdin, being Haggadah Eidus is in Bezdin. So Rameir says that teaches you that the din of mipi of shvuas acherim is only in Bezdin. Okay, and then if we continue in the Mishnah. He says it says in Layagid, and that tells you it has to be in Bezdin, but he's not mechalik. He says even though the pasuk is talking about piacherim, it will also apply to where it's a shvuas atzmai. As we're going to see, he learns it out from Gzeir Shava that shvuas atzmai is also chayiv, and therefore he's going to say it will also apply over here. The Gemara is going to explain exactly why both of them are, what the reasons for their machlekes is. So let's go to the Gemara. B'fnei bezim shaloi b'fnei bezim. Zok the Gemara. But my kamifalti. What is the machlekes between Reb Meir and the Chacham? That Reb Meir says that a shvuas atzmai can be done outside of bezin, but it's only mipi acherim that's limited to be in bezin, and the Chacham say whether it's a shvuas atzmai or shvuas acherim, it has to be in bezin. Amru Rabbanan kamei de Rav Papa. The Rabbanan said in front of Rav Papa, the reason for the machlekes is the argument about the machlekes that we have throughout Shas, whether when we learn something from somewhere else, do we say don mina umina? Do we say what you're learning from a different place, you import the rules of the place where you learned it from? Or do we say don mina v'uki ba'asra? Or do we say when you learn something from somewhere else, do you import it and then you treat it with the rules of the place that it was learned to? So my analogy for this is if you have a copy paste, right? You copy a bunch of text, then you want to paste it into something else. It gives you a few options of how you want it. Do you want to keep the original formatting, or do you want to apply the formatting in the document that you're putting it into? And that's what domino vuki basra is. Those are the two options. When you're learning something from someone else, do you keep the original formatting, the place where you put it in from, and you put it in here, which in the case of a document will usually look pretty ridiculous. You never choose that one, because then it's not going to match the place where it is. Or do you say that no, you take it out, but you apply the rules of the thing you're learning it out to? So how does that apply over here? What does that have to do with our case? So that's the Gemara. He says, doesn't say anything about a shuas atzmai in shuas ha'edus. In shuas ha'edus, the only thing it says, im shama koil Allah, which is a shua imposed by someone else. It doesn't say a shua that the person makes the full shua himself. So we have to learn it out from pikadon. There's a shua that you make on a pikadon when someone denies that he owes, that he's holding someone else's pikadon. He has to make a shua, and if he's lying, he brings the carbon asham. So over there, it's the shuas atzma. There's no such thing as a shuas that it's a shua that's imposed by someone else. Over there, it's talking about stamazeh when a person makes a shua. So ma pikadon mushba mipi atzmai chayev, af edus mushba mipi atzmai chayev. And by pikadon, there's no nafkamina between in Bezdin or outside of Bezdin. So we'll say that since we're learning out the din of mipi atzmai from pikadon, and by pikadon, there's no nafkamina between in Bezdin and outside of Bezdin. So the shuas atzmai will be good whether it's in Bezdin or not Bezdin. That's Rameir. Umina ma pikadon bein bebezdin bein shaloi bebezdin av edus bein beedus bezdin bein shaloi bebezdin. That's the Rameir. He says domina umina. So you learn from pikadon, and by pikadon there's no difference in Bezdin or outside of Bezdin. So atzmai, shuas atzmai is not going to be a difference between in Bezdin or outside Bezdin. Rabban and Savri don mina bu'uki ba'asra. They say no, that you apply the rules of the place that you're learning it to. Ma pikadon mushba atzmai chayev. Af edus mushba atzmai chayev. So we learn out. He says also that you learn out for pikadon that mushba atzmai when a person makes his own shua is chayev, because it doesn't mention that by shua edus, but we have to learn out for pikadon. Bu'uki ba'asra ma mushba acher bebezin en shaloi bebezin loy. But in shuas edus, the only thing that is mentioned is a mushba acher, and that's only in Bezdin and not outside of Bezdin. So af mushba outside Bezdin in shaloi bebezin loy. So too we'll learn out that the shuas ha'edus, a mushba atzma, we should learn out from, even though you're learning it out from pikadon, we're going to apply the rules of shuas ha'edus, and in shuas ha'edus, we say only in Bezdin, not outside of Bezdin. So tomorrow, Amalu said to Amid Beis, Amalu Papa, even pikadon garmi la rabbanon the amalei pligi domina umina. The Papa says no. Everyone agrees don mina umina that even the rabbanon, if we were learning out from pikadon, they would have to say that you learn out with the rules of pikadon, and it would be whether in Bezdin or not in Bezdin. But the Chachamim, I'm sorry, that even pikadon gam l'rabban the kli amalei pligi the don mina umina, we would apply the rules of pikadon. Then they would agree with Rameir, even that you'd be chayiv for shuas edus, even if it was chutz lebezdin. Elahainu time of the Rabban. There's a different reason why the Rabbanan say that it's only in Bezdin and not outside Bezdin. The Ma'aseh lebakal v'chaymer. They learn out the din of shuas atzmei from a kal v'chaymer. Umami pi'acherim chayiv. If someone who didn't actually make a shua, but someone else said to him, "I'm imposing a shua on you," and he was masking, he still continued denying it. He's going to be chayiv. If he made the shua himself, he should certainly be chayiv. But we're learning out the kal v'chaymer is if he's chayiv from Mipi acherim, he's certainly going to be mechuyev b'yatzmai, but it can only apply in the cases where mipi acherim would be work. Ma mush b'acherim b'bezdin in shalei b'bezdin loy. Av mush b'yatzmai b'fnei bezdin in shalei b'fnei bezdin loy. Amalei Rabban l'Rapapa. The Rabban answer back to the Papa. Can you really contend that the Chachamim are not? You're trying to say that the reason for the Rabbanon is not because of Don Mino, because they hold Don Mino Buki Ba'asra. It's really because of a Kal V'chaimer. But Tanan Gavit Pikadon. But the problem is that by Pikadon it only mentions a Shavuos Atzmai. So the Gemara is going to see we're going to have to look. We're going to need this Gzeira Shava not just to teach that Shavuos that Shavuos Atzmai is chayiv by Shavuos Ha'edus, but we're also going to need to tell you that Shavuos Acherim is chayiv by Pekadon. But Tanan Gabi Pekadon, Shavuos Ha'Pekadon Heges B'Anoshim B'Chaykim B'Kroivim B'Kshen B'Psulin B'Fnei Bez. So it has all these things just to compare it to Shavuos Ha'edus. Shavuos Ha'edus, the person has to be a kosher at ein in order for it to be a Shavuos Ha'edus. But by Shavuos Ha'Pekadon, you don't need any of those things. So that's why the Mishnah says it doesn't make a difference whether it's Noshim, whether it's kosher Edom. That's irrelevant because we're talking about a Shvuah of someone who's denying that they owe money, they owe a Pekadon. But we say B'fnei Bezdin v'shalei B'fnei Bezdin mipi atzmai or mipi acher B'fnei Bezdin shalei B'fnei Bezdin b'fi atzmai. And the din of, if he says it b'fi atzmai, it doesn't make a difference whether it's b'fnei bezin v'shalai b'fnei bezin, because the Torah by shus to be cotton is talking about a b'fi atzmai. There's no chilik there in b'fnei bezin shalai b'fnei bezin. But if he gets a shvuah mipi acherim, if the other person imposed a shvuah on him, he's only mechuyev b'fnei bezin. Divrei Reb Meir. This is Reb Meir. V'chab ben mipi atzmai ben mipi acherim kivin shekafa by chayiv. The Chum will say over here exactly the opposite of what they said by Shavuos Ha'edus. He said they will say whether it's in Pi'atzah or whether it's in Pi'acherim, once he's kaifer, he's chayiv. It doesn't make a difference whether it's in Bezin or not, because they're learning. In this case, they're learning Shavuos HaPikadon from Shavuos Ha'edus. Acherim we don't have in Shavuos. Acherim we don't have in Shavuos HaPikadon. So learning out from Shavuos Ha'edus, or May will say it's limited to only bebezdin. The Chum will say no, just like bipi acherim, there's no nafkamina of whether it's b'fnei bezdin shalei b'fnei bezdin. So too, it's going to be by Shavuos HaPikadon. So bipi acherim b'pikadon min all rabban the chayav la the gamila me'edus. So the only way that they know that bipi acherim works according to Rabban, it's because they learn it from Edis. They say, so you see from here that it clearly, the machlekes, when we're learning out from Shavuos Ha'edus, Shavuos Ha'Pikadon, has to be of whether we say Domino, Vuki Basra. So the Rav Papa says, listen, I agree with you, you're right. This is Taka Raya, that the machlekes remain the Rabbanon is because of Domino, Vuki Basra. All I was saying is you try to bring a Raya from our Mishnah, that could be explained in a different way, like I said before, that we learned it out from a Kal V'chaimer. In Mehalek Lamashmarino. You're right, but all I was just saying is you can't learn it from our Mishnah, but you can in Chanami learn from there that's what the Machlekes is. We said you chayiv for Shavuos Ha'edus when you do it b'mezid. Minani mili. In all of the different isurim that we say you bring a carbon oil v'yard, it says v'nelam that the person was unaware. The kanloi never above v'nelam, but over here it doesn't say v'nelam. So that's coming l'chayiv ala mezid k'shoigig. It's coming to be m'chayiv that he's m'chayiv if he does it b'mezid, just like if he did it b'shoigig. He's also chayiv when he does a shoigig together with the zodan edus, meaning if someone knows like we explained when we learned the Mishnah. If someone knows that he's saying false edus, so he's amazed on that he's saying false edus, but he's a shayig nevertheless. So what does that mean? How can it be a shayig even though he knows that he's lying? It's talking about someone who knows that he's that he's making a shua that he doesn't know the edus, and he knows that he knows the edus, but he doesn't know that you smechuyev a carbon on it. So that will still be a shaygig. When you give hasra, you always have to make a shvua. You always have to get hasra telling you that you know what the einish is, and this person didn't know the einish is shaygig in that sense. But as long as he's amazed, when we say that in order to be mechayev oil be yared for shvua edus, it has to be amazed. It just means amazed on the actual avla, on the oven that he's doing. But he doesn't have to know all the details. He's not chayiv for a plain shkaga. So that means that if he totally was not aware of what, if he said at the time that he said, I don't know this edus, he was not aware that he knew the edus. He forgot that he knew the edus, and then later on he remembered it. We say he's not chayiv. Let's say this is a mission that proves the case of Rav Kahana and Ravasi. Meaning, we had before, Rav Kahana and Ravasi were arguing about something that Rav said. And each one made a shvua, this is what Rav said. And the other one made a shvua, no, this is what the Rav said. And they were chaylik. And Rav said, no, one of you is right. And he said which one was right. The Gemara doesn't say who it was. And they asked Rav, does that mean that the one who swore that Rav had said A, and it turned out Rav said B, does that mean that the one who said Rav says A was over on a shvua? So Rav said, no, you're an einus. You really believed that that's what you thought. So that's an einus. That's not a shayg. So Zok the Gemara, how could Rav Kahana and Rav Asi not have known this? If we say over here, that seems to mean that if someone really doesn't know, if he's a pure shaykh, that he doesn't know that what he's saying is not true, he's potter. So how could they have not known that? How could Rav Kahana and Rav Asi have asked, whichever one was that asked Rav, how could they have not known? So we're like, Avagav the Tanan Itzrich, Avagav the Tanan, even though we said in our Mishnah, Itzrich, Sagad the Ramina Hachahu Delay Ksivin Nelam, they didn't shaykh Dum Yidamezid. Over here, we're talking about Legabe Yeshuas Edis, that it doesn't say Venelam. So it has to be a shaygig that's Dum Yidamezid. He has to be, it doesn't have to be an Einus. Even if it's just a regular shaygig, he's not going to be chayiv. So when we say, over here, maybe in that case, he's not chayiv when it's not considered a shvua when he doesn't realize. Over there, when we say chayiv when you're a shaygig, even a very tiny shkaga where the person taka thought what he was saying was the truth. Kamash Malon, that's why we have to tell you. That's why the Mishnah has to tell us. That's why Rav Asi and Rav Kahana were not sure. Zok the Mishnah. Shuas Eidus Ketzar. How do you have a Shuas Eidus? Amul Shnaim, Bo Vahiduni, Shua She'enanu Yoidim L'cha Eidus. Vahiduni. He says to two Eidim, come and say Eidus. And they say, Shua She'enanu Yoidim L'cha Eidus. And they say, no, we have a Shua. They make a Shua Atzmai. They make a Shua that we don't know Eidus. Oisha Amrulai, Eino Yoidim L'cha Eidus. Or if they said to him, we don't know any Eidus, Mashbi'ani Aleichem. And he says, I want to make a Shua. And they said, Amen, which is also a Shvuas Atzmai. Hara'elu Chayavim. In those cases, it's going to be Chayav. Heshbi'a Aleihem Chamesh Pa'amim Chutz Lebezin. If this case happened, and he made this, we're talking about over here, where he put the Shvu on them, when he said to them, B'mashbi'a, he was outside of Bezin. So if he did that 5 times, Chutz Lebezdin, Ubo Lebezdin, V'haidu, and then afterwards they came to Bezdin and were Maida. Like we could say we're going according to a mayor where they said a Shuas Atzmai Chutz Lebezdin, or according to Rabbanim we're talking about where after he said I want you to say an Edus, he went to Bezdin and the Edom came and were Kaifer and Bezdin and they were Maida. P'turin. They're going to be Potter. Because Bola Edom v'Kafru. They're going to be Potter because since they never, I'm sorry, we're not going in Remei, we're going in the Chachamim. No, I'm sorry. Everyone agrees if you are kaifer outside of Bezin, both Remei and the Chachamim say, we're not talking about a Shuas Atzmai. We're talking about over here where he asked them to make the Shvua and he did it outside of Bezdin. So everyone agrees that Shvuas Acherim has to be in Bezdin, so they're going to be potter. Kafru, Ubola Bezdin v'haidu, tur. They went after they were kaifer, they went to Bezdin, they were moida, then the potter. Kafru, chayav and al kol achas v'achas. But if they're kaifer in Bezdin, then the chayiv to each one. If after he was mashbia them outside the Bezdin, they were kaifer in Bezdin, the chayiv each one. Hishbia lein heipam b'fnei Bezdin. But if he was mashbia them, instead of being mashbia them outside of Bezdin, and then him being kaifer in Bezdin, the Teveya asked him to say that he put the shvua on them chutz leBezdin. But kafru, and they were kaifer in Bezdin. In that case, listen, it's a shvua sacherim, but it's in Bezdin. So you're chayiv, but he's only going to be chayiv one. Amr of Shimon Matam. Rav Shimon explains the reason. What's the reason for this? Since if a person said, he was asked to swear, he had a shvua put on him in Bezdin, do you know Edis? And he swore, I don't know Edis. So that's already an Edis itself. The shvua is testifying that he doesn't know Edis. And once you make a Edis in Bezdin, you cannot retract it. The din is magid. Once you make an Edis in Bezdin, you can't go back on it. So once he made that first shvua and kfira in Bezdin, that's an Edis Bezdin. And if he was going to go back and say, change his mind, he wouldn't be believed. So the second shvua never has an opportunity to be chal. Since he already made his assertion, he made his Edis in Bezdin that he doesn't know Edis, the second shvua is not chal because he's not able to go back on what he said before. So this is not adding anything by making a second shvua that repeats the first one. Kafru shnei. So that's one. Kafru shnei ka'echad. If two edim are both kaifer at the same time, shnei chayavim. Both of them are mechayiv for a shvuas edis. But if it's one after the other, we have two edim. Like right, Reuven comes to Shimon and Levi and says, "I want you to say edis for me." And if Shimon and Levi both say at the same time a shvua that we don't know anything, they're both going to be chayiv. But if Reuven says, shvua, I don't know anything, and then 10 minutes later, Shimon says, shvua, that I don't know anything, the second one is potter, because he's only an aid echad at that point. Since the first one is already kaifer, he's no longer an aid. So there's only one aid. One aid is not enough to be chayiv. The Gemara is going to talk about why is that the case. Kafar echad, v'hoida echad, if one was kaifer, and the other one was Maida, HaKoicha for Chayiv. In that case, the Kaifer is Chayiv. Since one agreed that he knows Edis, then the second one, he's the second aid, and he would be enough to be Mechayiv Mammon. Hayushtei Kite Edim, but if there were two groups of Edim, until now we're talking about two individual Edim, now if they have two groups of two Edim, Kafra Rishayna, if the first group was Kaifer, they said, we don't know any Edis. V'acha Kafra Hashni, and then the second one was Kaifer, and we find out both of them were lying. Then later on, they're maida. Shteim chayavas. Each group is chayav nesha edus yechayil is kayim b'shteim, because either group would have been enough to either set of edim would have been enough to cause the money to be transferred. The Gemara is going to ask the obvious question: why is this any different? If you have one pair of edim and one. Why is the first group going to be chayiv for being kaifer if there's a second pair of edim that could have done it? They're not necessary. So why are they being chayiv? So the Gemara will give a kimta to explain that. Amar Shmuel, Ru'u sheratz acharein. This din of shuas edis, that if someone is asked to say edis by a party, a litigant, and he denies it falsely, that he has to bring a carbon oil of yared, that's only where the litigant, the teveya, the plaintiff, asked him to swear. But it's not just if he decided on his own to go over to a guy and say, Shvu, I don't know what it is. He has to be asked. So Zaktimar Amar Shmuel, Ru'u sheratz acharein. If the Shimon and Levi, the two Edim, saw that Reuven is running after them, and they know good and well why Reuven's running, because he wants to ask them to be Edim in his din Torah. Amru lai ma'ata ratz achareinu. They say to him, before he can say anything, why are you chasing after us? We're making a shvur that we don't know any edis. P'turin. That's potter. until they hear him physically, verbally say, I want you to say Edus, and then they make a shvua that they don't. In this case, they volunteered the shvua just because they saw him running, but he didn't actually say anything to them. Why do you have to say this? Tnina. We have a Mishnah that says this. If Reuven and Shimon are in a din Torah, and Levi and Yehuda are the Eidim, and Levi and Yehuda know that Shimon owes money to Reuven. They're Eidim that Shimon owes the money to Reuven. If Reuven sent his Eved to tell Levi and Yehuda they should come swear, or if Shimon, who was the defendant, said to them, "Go ahead and swear. I don't care. You go ahead. Mashbi ani alechem. I'm imposing a shvur on you. You should come and say this. Both of them are pata until you hear it from the. It has to be verbally a verbal request to say edus from the plaintiff, from the person who needs the edus of these edim. So no. We still have to tell you. So you see that it has to be verbal. So what is Shmuel adding by saying Ratzach Hareim is not good enough? Since he's chasing after them, it's as if he said it. When Eved is not him saying it, it's his Eved. Or if the Nitva said it, he didn't say it at all. So that's what Shmuel is saying, that Ratzach Hareim is not the same thing as saying. We already learned that as well, that Ratzach Hareim is not treated as saying it. Shua Se'edis Ketzad. We said in our Mishnah. How do you have Shua Se'edis? Amal Edim Bo Vahiduni Shvua Vahiduni. He said to the Edim, come and say Edis, and they say Yeshvua. Amar in Loy Amar Loy. The Mashmois of our Mishnah is it's because he said it. It says only because he said it, but if he didn't say it, it would not be a valid Shua Se'edis. Amar Lav Dafka. The Gemara says no. Amar is Lav Dafka. Even though the Mishnah said Amar, it doesn't mean B'Dafka. He said Amar. You might be able to say, even if he's Ratzach Hareim, that's all treated as Amar. And I'll prove to you that Amar is Lav Dafka. Gavet Pikadon Diktani, we have a Mishnah later on, we're talking about a Shvuas HaPikadon, which is not a Shvuas, it's a totally different Shvuah. It's nothing to do with someone being Taveyim, it's where a person denies having a Pikadon. Shvuas HaPikadon Kate said, Amaloi Tainli Pikadon, Sheyesh B'Yadecha. He said, give me the Pikadon that I have in your hand. Hachaname Amar in, Loy Amar Loy. There's no such thing. The pasuk says any type of shua. It doesn't have to be that it was imposed on him. Ella Amar Lav Dafka. You see, since it says Amar by shua b'kadon, where there certainly is no requirement that it's imposed by the other party, so you see Amar is Lav Dafka. Hachanami Lav Dafka. So over here also, when it says Amar, it doesn't mean b'dafka Amar. It could even be Ratzach Hareim. So the Gemara, Hi Mai, Iyam b'shama Amar the Hachadafka. Tana Hasam Amar. Tana Hasam Atu Hacha. It said Amar over there because it said over there. Liamrit Loy Amar the Hasam Dafka. Loy Amar the Hacha Dafka. Amar Lumli Lemisnaya. Why do we taka say Amar over there if it's Lav Dafka? So Gemara Dilma Orcha de Milsa Kamash Malon. It's just saying Stamazai. That's the way it normally is. That the parties will say make a shuas apikadon, or they'll say make a shuas ha'edus. But it doesn't mean bedafka amar, so it's not a ra that you could depend on, and therefore Shmuel had to say his din that Ratzach Hareim is not considered to be a shvua seidus. Tanya Kavas B'Shmuel Rausha Ba'ach Hareim. He saw that they were coming after him. Amaloi Ma'ate Ba'ach Hareinu, and they said, "Why are you coming after us? Shvua she'ein on yaid l'cha edus turin de pater v'em b'kadon, and if it's a padan, it's chayiv." So you see over here, this is a brisa that's clearly saying, like Shmuel, that it says that if he's running after them, and they volunteer the shvur without him asking them, that it's not going to be a shvur se'ed, it's going to be potter. And by Hashem by pikadon, you would be chayiv. But the point is, we see by shvur se'ed that you're going to be potter. So we said in the Mishnah, if I mashpia on you. If he was mashpia him 5 times outside of Bezdin to make a shvua, he's going to be chayiv for each one, because after he made one, he could still be chayzer. So the second one could also be a valid shvua. But if it was mashpia in Bezdin, then he's only chayiv one because he has no opportunity to be chayzer in between, because then he would be chayzer u'mager. Where do we know that a person is only chayiv for being kaifer, for denying when he's asked, when he has a shvu imposed on him, that he's only mechayiv in bezdin and not outside of bezdin? Amar Abaya, this is what we've been saying this from the beginning, but this is where it came from. Amar Abaya, Amakra, Imla Yad v'nasa avoined. This din of shvu se'edis is only in a place where if you were actually to say the edus, it would be mechayiv mammon, which is in bezdin. So that's why the pasuk of shvuas edus is talking about bedafka in bezdin. Amar Papa Abaya yihachi ema shvua gufa bezdin in shalei bezdin loy. Why do we say that if he had the shvua imposed on him, as long as he was kaifer in bezdin, that's going to have the din that it's considered a shvuas edus. But outside of bezdin, even though we're saying that he can't be kaifer outside of bezdin, but he could have the shvu imposed on him outside of bezdin. As long as he denies it in bezdin, that's enough to be the din of imla yag. So come on, lois takadaita can't be. The has to be that he could bring the shvu outside of bezdin. The Tanya laachas lachayev al kol achas v'achas. The pasuk says, "Vayiki yesham laachas me'elav izvad la'shachat ola." The person is going to be from one of these things, and we say to him for each one. But if he has to make the shvua in bezin, how could you have? Why do we need a pasuk to tell you? How could the pasuk be telling you the mchayev for each shvua? It's never possible to have more than one shvua. Like we said, so it must be that it's possible to make the shvua outside of bezin and the kfira inside bezdin. That's how you can have the mechayiv more than one, and that's why the pasuk is saying that you mechayiv for each one. Kafru shneim ka'achas chayavin. The Mishnah said if two people, you have two edim, and they both were kaifer at the same time, they're going to be chayiv. But we said if one did after the other one, they're going to be pat. How could you have two people saying it at the same time? It's not possible to do two things at the same time. Going to Rabbi Yisrael says you can do both at the same time. If they were one after the other, like we said, then once the first one already was kaifer, so then the second one is only an eid echad, so it's not enough to be mechayiv. So you wouldn't, like we said, the eidus has to be one that could be Motzei mammon, and one is not able to be Motzei mammon. No, it doesn't have to be. Rabbi Yisrael says it could be one was after the other. When they did a terch kedei of one another. So and terch kedei dibur is like considered to be the same dibur. So even though they're not exactly the same time, it's all considered same one time. How long is terch kedei dibur? It's the amount of time for a Talmud to say shalom to his Rebbe. Ad amri shua she'enon yoyed l'cha'edis tu v'havi. But we're talking about what he has to say is shua she'enon yoyed l'cha'edis. That takes longer than she'elos Talmud l'rav. So how can you say both of them said shua she'enon yoyed l'cha'edis within terch kedei dibur? Each one of their members is longer than terch kedei dibur. So it doesn't mean that they both said it within one terch kedei dibur. It means they were not once finished saying it, and the other one started saying his within terch kedei dibur of his friend, and that's considered to be at the same time. Okay, we'll stop over here. Bez Hashem tomorrow at 6:30. I'm going to be on Zoom.